Hey guys, I'm Tony.
What's going on? Nick here.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Storm, and you're listening to another episode of Bouncing Back. What's going on, fellas?
Not much. We have with us today, we have Lori Collins.
Hello.
Who is
Hello.
Lori?
Who is Lori? Lori, who are you?
That's a loaded question. I met Nick and Tony several years ago. I worked for the Treatment Continuum Alternative to Prison in Northampton County for 10 years. And then I moved over to Lehigh County and did the same thing there for about a year. And right now I'm retired.
So it's safe to say that prison reform is your passion.
Yes.
All right.
So you spend your time advocating for probation and prison reforms and helping other people find their way out of the system, so to speak.
Yes, I'm still very active in the ACLU, in their Smart Justice initiative. I'm still involved in Families Against Mandatory Minimums. So, yeah, I'm definitely still involved in the scene, but just not on payroll right now.
Just behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to have you on because I just know that in my experience with you, everything that I've seen you do came from your heart. And there's not very many people that I've seen that worked with the system that did what they did because they wanted to help people. And it was just rare to see somebody like you. And that was why I wanted to bring you out here, especially when we were doing an episode about prison reform. It just seemed right to have you come out and chat with us.
Well, thank you. I'm very grateful to be here.
We've collected some information that we're going to talk about. It's just basically prison reform through the years, and we're going to discuss how it's evolved and what it's turning into, and we all have our own thoughts and opinions on where it could go. So
I was going to say we're going to throw a little bit of personal experience in there as well, so because I think most of us, I'm not sure about Storm, but we've all have our jail stories.
Oh, I've been there.
Okay, so we all have a little bit of experience,
I've
you
been
know,
there.
in and out of the incarceration system here in America, especially in PA. From my experience, and I've been in several county jails across a couple different states. PA is by far the worst that I've had to deal with, and not so much from like conditions of the jail, but just from being stuck in the system.
yeah, definitely like the recidivism in Northampton County in general was just ridiculous.
The system is so bad.
It's terrible.
It's so easy to get in, but your ass is struggling to get out.
You ain't never heard
you
that-
gotta do a lot of stuff to get out. One little thing and you get in.
You remember, you ain't never heard good old Pennsylvania, you come on vacation and leave on probation.
That's right.
I never heard that before, but I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
It's funny. You just
And then you
said
return
that
on violation.
about staying easy to get in and hard to get out.
Oh yeah.
And there is a Senate bill right now that I believe it was just passed in the House, and it's moving over to the Senate or vice versa. I don't remember, but it is probation reform essentially. And what they're looking to do is put a max of 3 years on probation, because right now you could be on probation, you could be on county probation for years. I mean, I know I've worked with guys who were on for 14 years for county probation.
Like what keeps them on there? Like you get like
Well,
a
that's
sentence.
the original sentence,
like
because they.
if you keep recurring and you keep getting in trouble, does it extend?
Yeah, it can because they'll remove your street time and you start all over again. But even like the original sentence, I believe that what they're trying to do now is they're trying to keep it so that you can only be on probation for 3 years. And the reason for that is because of, well, I'm sure we'll talk about later. But
and part of that too, like I know like you were talking about mandatory minimums too, and like so like for second DUI offense is a mandatory 5-year sentence. Whether it be
I think that's
all
the third. I think that's the
maybe
third.
it is the third.
second
Third.
DUI highest tier is a 5-year tail.
It's a 5-year
also.
tail.
5-year tail?
Right?
Yes.
And it's
crazy.
and it
Wow.
can be determining how you spend that 5 years is based on what the judge, how they sentence you, you know, your probation officer, the whole 9 yards. Because you could, I mean, they don't typically do this, but you could spend all those 5 years in prison, right? Because it is a state sentence. Anything over 2 years is a state sentence. So, but most times they put you in jail for a couple of days and they release you, and then you're on the probation tail for those 5 years. But I do know from what I've heard now, and I have some friends that work in the legal system as well, is they're working to lower those, even for DUI cases, because people are getting right at the end of that 5 years, and then they have one little slip up. They didn't make a fine payment. They didn't change their address, something so minuscule, and they're yanking that 5 years and starting it all over again.
Over a
Wow.
technical violation.
Over technical violations, not even
That's
committing
part
a
of
new
this bill.
crime. You are just technical violations, and you are going back to jail. And
That's
you're
what
getting
part of the bill
resentenced.
is also to reduce technical violations and people getting their street time removed. And I'm sure you've heard of like the Meek Mills movement.
Yes.
Is that the
I
whole
actually
thing
just-
what pushed it?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
You gotta
Good.
watch his documentary.
Oh, I seen it. I
Oh,
seen it. It's
great.
called Free
It's
Meek.
great.
If you haven't watched it, check it out on. I think Amazon Prime has it.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
think it's on Netflix too.
Is it on
Was
Netflix?
that, was that a free plug?
we plug
Meek,
his
send us
stuff
a
for
cat. Send us each a check, please.
Free advertising.
Yeah, it's definitely something that as Meek Mill's been in the system and he's been there and he has 11 years I think he was on probation or parole, and he had a tail and it just kept extending for just little stupid stuff. So I think he has that power, and I think that's a good look for him. I think that's a good look for everybody too.
I've
definitely-
had the same problems. My first adult charge, I was 25, and I got a burglary charge. I was in active addiction at the time, and I was stealing and robbing everything I could to support my habit. And instead of being offered a treatment, for my addiction, I was put in jail, and I was released on parole. And then a couple months later, I relapsed, and instead of being sent back to treatment, I got sent back to jail, which absolutely did nothing. Honestly, what it did for me was it introduced me to more people that I could use with, buy from, sell shit to, steal shit from, and that's exactly what it did. It didn't help me in any way whatsoever.
And I think that the general public is misinformed in what prison really is and what it's really like. I think it's an assumption, number one, that there's no drugs in jail, and we all know that's not true.
Oh,
I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who picked up who never touched heroin in their life until they went to prison.
Really?
Specifically
Wow.
Northampton County Prison.
right.
Or the state. I know the state prisons in New Jersey. I had a couple guys there that picked up their heroin. They were dealers before. They went in, did long bids in state prison in New Jersey, and picked up heroin addiction while they were there. So, most people, I think, the general public who maybe doesn't have anyone that they love that's ever been in jail or anything, is under the assumption that, well, jail and our prison system, they're basically to rehabilitate you. They are rehabilitation, and that's not true.
It's not true.
Even though they're told that. They're told that that's how their taxpayer dollars are being spent. That's not accurate.
And this is not a new thing, as you're going to find out, guys. Like, this has just been done throughout the past, 300-400 years, ever since our country was, before our country was founded, other countries were doing it too. It's just been the same thing with different groups of people every 50 years. Just, you got a group of people that are trying to keep the people locked up, and then you got a group of people that are trying to make conditions just a little bit better. And it's just been repeated over and over and over again. The battle is just come.
Well, and the people that think that you can't get drugs or any kind of contraband in jail, just let's look at the facts here. Jails are run by men, right? By mankind. Mankind it's fallible. We're fallible. As a human being, we're fallible. We make mistakes. We're just as susceptible to addiction as anybody else is, So if it's not another inmate smuggling something in, it could be one of the correction officers that's bringing stuff in and giving it to, and a lot of these prisons, and a lot of these prisons are also run by gangs, and the gangs, they extort people, they extort the higher ups in the prisons to make conditions to where they can still make money even though they're behind bars.
Absolutely.
So, Lori, tell us a little bit about your whole thing that you did and everything
Northampton
else.
County.
Yeah.
In Northampton County, and I also did in Lehigh County for about a year. Basically, what it was a restrictive intermediate punishment grant through the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, and what the goal was to divert level 3 and 4 offenders on the sentencing matrix. So that's people who are looking at doing significant time, divert them from lengthy jail sentences and sending them to treatment. in lieu of lengthy incarceration. So in order to be eligible, you had to have a substance use disorder and meet criteria for needing treatment, but you also had to be level 3 or 4 on the sentencing matrix, which meant that it wasn't like misdemeanor crimes. It
was big
you know,
crimes.
felonies.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So basically, what her program really did, because what happens when people get caught up in drug addiction is they get caught up in that constant cycle of breaking the law, getting locked up over petty crimes, and then once in a while they'll do something major that'll catch them, like a felony or something, and then those points rack up in the state of Pennsylvania, and then you're sitting at a certain tier of, like, I don't know, like a bad guy on their paperwork. Like,
Well,
like
yeah.
they give you a number. Like they give you a gravity score. And
Everybody has their prior record score,
Yeah.
and every arrest that you have, that number, slowly bumps up until it's a
and the
5.
higher
or
that
you become a
number is,
refoul.
the higher that number is, the stronger your sentences are. So, like, dude, I've unfortunately been to
You have a
prison.
good example of it.
I have a
with
very
your
good
most
example
recent-
of high numbers. If you look at my actual number, it's like an 11 or something like that. But
Well,
they
you're a
stopped
refoul.
counting at 5. At
So
5,
you're-
they stopped counting. I am considered a reconvicted felon, which means I've had multiple felonies, and they basically, I'm like nothing. Like, I'm the worst of the worst. They look at it on paper anyway.
So your simple possession charge, which got you into TCAP,
Right. Turned
Um,
into a 3. It was going to be a 3-year bid over 2
Simple
bags
possession.
of heroin. Simple possession.
which would have been 6 months
On probation.
on probation. Yeah. Not
So people with
incarcerated.
big felonies and stuff like that go to your program.
Only
now,
if it's nonviolent.
Now explain like the
Nonviolent
process.
offenders.
Now explain the process of your program. Like somebody gets into your program, what do you do?
So first, I would go in and I would assess them to determine whether or not they were, in my opinion, ready to make that change. Because let's face it, we're all able to change, but we're not all always ready to change. Although a lengthy jail sentence definitely is a good motivator. I would go out and I would meet with them and kind of determine like what level of care they needed for drug and alcohol wise, treatment wise, and what their motivation was like. And then once I determined that they were a good fit, that they were eligible for the program, we would have to go in front of their sentencing judge and ask that they come into the program. The judge could still say no at that point, which is, some people I think were more, I think you were a little bit of a fight. I'm looking over at Nick right now.
So when I went through my sentencing for TCAP program, I also graduated from the TCAP program with Tony. Judge, I'm not going to name names, but there was a judge in Northampton County that did not want to make me, or did not want to sentence me to the TCAP program. He looked back at my prior record and he looked at my history of being on probation and parole, and I had never completed any probation or parole without maxing out with violations. So basically what would happen was I would violate so many times they would just take me off the street and make me do all the jail time instead of being on the street to do the probation time. And because of that, he didn't think that I would be a good fit for the TCAP program because it required intensive probation. He didn't think that I would make it. He thought I was going to violate right away.
Look at you now.
But look at me now. But
Right.
what it comes down to, like Lori said too, like she looks for people that are ready to make that change. And by the time I had met with Lori Collins, I was ready to make that change. I didn't know how it was going to happen or how I was going to do it, but I was ready to do something different. I knew that.
And there's one question that I ask everybody when I meet with them for the first time, and it's, what are you willing to do for recovery? And there's only one right answer to that. And both of these guys answered it the right way, and the answer is whatever it takes, because you were willing to do whatever it took for your addiction to get, your drugs and live your criminal lifestyle. So you have to be willing to put in as much effort into recovery. Both of them answered that question correctly, and my experience is people who answer that the right way, and like you said, you were ready to submit, like you were powerless, you recognized that, and you were willing to do whatever I told you. If I said that you have to go live in a cage with monkeys and dance 4 times a day for a on stage, you would have done it.
Absolutely.
The only thing I was unwilling to do was to get my meeting list signed.
I know. I do remember that.
Now your program, when somebody goes into it, how long does it take? Was there like a certain time frame for them to be there?
I believe for Nick, when he was sentenced
'Changed.
90 days.